violated them.
What's up YouTube? Agent Zero here, and today I'm going to be doing an in-depth review of Foregone Conclusion, a new auto rifle that has come with the Warmind DLC in Destiny 2. So first, let's take a look at the stats. It's a 720 round per minute auto, and has 51 rounds in the magazine. The first sight is hit mark IS, the second sight is clean shot IS, the third is red dot 2 MOA. And we'll take a look at those in a little bit. The first middle perk is Alloy Magazine, and the second is Armor Piercing Rounds. And I'll get into detail of those in a little as well. And finally, the bread and butter, High Impact Reserves. Rounds at the end of the magazine deal more damage, and we'll take a look at how much extra damage they are dealing in the video later on. So first, let's talk about the Hitmark IS, which is the sight on the screen, and Alloy Magazine. Hitmark IS is kind of a squarish sight, and is definitely pretty good. I like those clearer sights, so it's not kind of muddling up my screen. Now, Alloy Magazine, you have faster reload speed, but only when you let your magazine hit 0. So you have to unleash all of your ammunition before you get that increased reload speed. With High Impact Reserves, you have a reason to do so though. As the magazine is getting lower, you're dealing more damage. Now, Alloy Magazine is definitely a very good complement to High Impact Reserves. You should always in PvE be trying to let your gun run down to 0 so you can get that increased damage whether you're facing bosses or hordes of enemies. High Impact Reserves is very useful in PvE. In PvP, maybe not as much, but definitely PvE, you want to let your gun run down to 0 so you're not only getting that increased reload, but you're also doing the extra damage. Now this sight is kind of a circular sight, is the Clean Shot IS, and take a look on the screen. Those are some of the damages I was doing to this ogre. The first half of the magazine, I was doing about 33 in crit damage, and then once I hit the last shot crit, I did 40 damage. And I did somewhat of damage in between, where half mag, it seemed I was getting 37 damage, and then a little bit bigger as the mag went down. Here is the final shot on the screen. I don't like it as much because it does have that little black rim that kind of takes up a little of the screen that I don't like. But here is some more damage of High Impact Reserves as I was shooting at this wizard. It looked as though the first half of the magazine dealt 136 body damage and 170 crit, and as the magazine got lower, I did more. And where I was into the final 10 shots, it looked like I was doing 154, 155 to the body, and 200 to 204 with the crit. Now this is Armor Piercing Rounds, and doing damage to this wizard, I did about 6 more damage. And then to this second wizard, I did about 7 more damage to the shield with Armor Piercing Rounds. So that's something to note as well, that with Armor Piercing Rounds, you are doing extra damage to the shields. So now that I've kind of talked about the middle perks a little bit in the PvE aspect, let's talk about the PvP aspect of Foregone Conclusion. Now, Armor Piercing Rounds may not be as useful in PvP gameplay. Yes, you're doing a little bit of extra damage to shields, but I kind of prefer to have that ability to have that faster reload if I do let my magazine size get down to 0. So I kind of prefer playing with Alloy Magazine as opposed to Armor Piercing Rounds when I'm in the Crucible. However, the downfall of that is that you don't always want your gun to get down to 0 when you're playing in the Crucible. Now, you are doing that extra damage, and that definitely helps, especially when you're facing 2 or 3 enemies. However, after you finish those enemies off, you kind of want to reload just in case you get into another gun battle. You don't want to have to reload in the middle of the gun battle. Even if you have that increased damage, that reloading in the middle of a gun battle can actually mean the death of your character because you took the time to reload and the opponent didn't have to do that. That split second may be all your opponent needs to beat you in that gun battle. But now that we've talked about those two middle perks in PvP, let's talk about high impact reserves. I mentioned it a little bit, but when you are facing 2 or 3 enemies and you're letting that magazine run down, you're doing that extra damage, and it's definitely very good to get those multi-kills. Also, as a gun battle goes on, you're also getting the advantage because you're doing a little bit extra damage. Now, this gun is very good at the closer ranges, and it can also do well at medium range combat. Now, I wouldn't recommend getting into long range combat with this gun, as it isn't the best at long range combat. Earlier in this PvP gameplay, you saw me losing to a pulse rifle. So that's just something to note. When you're coming up at longer ranges against scout rifles, against pulse rifles, you may not fare as well. But in those closer ranges, you can definitely do well with Foregone Conclusion. It's nice to have that increased magazine size, and it's also nice to have high impact reserves. Again, if you let your magazine run down, it's also nice to have the alloy magazine, so you are getting that quicker reload and you can get back into the gun battle faster. Or if an enemy thinks he has the upper hand and chases after you as you're reloading, the enemy may be in for a shock because you may have reloaded very quickly and are back on your feet. So overall, what do I think of this gun? For PvE, I definitely recommend using it. High impact reserves is great no matter the scenario. Whether you're facing bosses or you're facing hordes of enemies, you have a reason to continually fire, and then you also have alloy magazine to help you reload quicker and just continually deal damage to enemies, no matter which enemy you're facing. So it's a very good gun for that. One thing I forgot to mention, it's a kinetic weapon, so that's just something of note. If there are other kinetic weapons that you really love, you may not want to replace them. In PvP, I do recommend using this gun, or at least giving it a shot. I did well with it in PvP, and if you're a more up-close type of player to a medium-range type of player, I think you'll find yourself doing very well with it. I did very well with it. I was able to get a lot of multi-kills and go on a lot of ruthless streaks with this gun. So overall, I recommend trying out the Foregone Conclusion. I think it's a tier 1 gun, and when I say tier 1, I mean you can use it in any circumstance and do well with it. So, have you gotten this gun before, and if so, what do you think of it? Let me know in the comments section. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel for more Destiny 2 content. Well, until next time, peace!